Head of Professional Belonging here at the RPS. Thank you for joining us again for a lunchtime live event. And today we're going to be acknowledging and celebrating NHS England's Equality, Diversity and Human Rights Week that's happening this week. So as part of those conversations and celebrations, we thought it'd be really good to highlight the different networks that pharmacists and pharmacy teams are getting involved with in their local areas and their local staff inclusion and diversity groups. So as part of that, so we want to showcase what's happening and how people can get involved. And our panel members will be sharing their experiences of how they're working with their local networks and suggestions of how different people can get involved. Because we appreciate that we need to create that sense of belonging within the profession, but that also has to happen at an organizational level and at a team level as well. And so how do we promote that at that team level in individual organizations, and not just from a pharmacy department sense, but also wider? We all work, some of us work in organizations where it's not just a pharmacy department, and how do we encourage that leadership from across the board? So I'd like to introduce my panel members. So we've got Charlotte Bell, who's the Inclusion Ambassador and Bart's Ability Champion. We've got Raj, who is chairs and is a member of local inclusion and diversity staff networks. And we've also got Adiola, who's a member of her local network in the North Central London CCG. So I'll run through the questions that we've already prepared, but anyone listening, if there's any additional questions that you'd like to ask, please do pop them in the chat box and we can ask them as well if we get around to it. So just to start, I wanted to ask, what motivated you to join and get involved with your local I&D initiatives in your area? So Adiola, I'll start with you.
I would say mine is both from a personal area as well as, I guess, developing in my career. So in terms of a personal area, it's just growing up in areas where I guess would be defined as areas of social deprivation. Whenever I tell someone I'm a pharmacist, or where I did my degree, or how far I've come in my career, it's always a surprise, like, oh, it's never just normal. And for me, it's like I've got to a point now, I was like, why isn't it normal? Why can't a Black female have achieved well in her life, as opposed to what certain stereotypes may be associated with a Black female? So for me, that is that personal area. And then in terms of work, it's being in meetings or being in spaces where sometimes I am the only Black person. And it's like, why and how, especially where I've worked in organizations which are serving communities which are very ethnically diverse. We should also have people who are representing them and who are trying to improve their health and outcomes who are also representative of those communities. So I would say it's both from personal and what I've seen in my working environment as well. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Wow, I had to do that live. I haven't done it ever. Thanks, Adiola. So sorry, Raj. Same question to you.
Can you hear me? Okay, brilliant. I think I sort of take on board what Adiola says, and it really resonates with me. I think for me, my career has spanned about just over a decade in the NHS now, and you become aware quite quickly that there aren't many people who look or sound like me in senior management positions. We're a very diverse workforce, but the more senior you become, the less diverse that is. And I guess that's what got me involved in the equality and diversity agenda within my organisation, but as well within the profession, because I think we could sort of tackle two things at the same time. I'm really sort of fond of intersectionality. So, we don't just have one protected characteristic. We quite often intersection multiple ones as well. And I'm quite fascinated about how they play off against each other. So how does someone who is already marginalised and then becomes even more sub-marginalised because of another protected characteristic deal with that, especially within healthcare settings when actually we want to promote equality and diversity and represent the communities that we serve. As Adiola said, how can we be a truly inclusive workforce? And actually, how can we truly meet the needs of the populations that we serve if people at all levels aren't representative of those communities.
Brilliant. Thank you, Raj. And Charlotte?
Thank you. So I think for me, it's very similar. It's about representation. As towards the end of my pharmacy degree, I discovered that I was struggling with dyslexia, and throughout the early stages of my career, I found that it was just something that wasn't talked about. I received a lot of comments from people I worked with and lecturers at university telling me, oh, you shouldn't really tell people that. That's not a good idea. You'll struggle as a pharmacist. And coming into my career, I sort of believed that it was something that I should be like kind of hiding or not really revealing. And then I saw lots of junior pharmacists as I became more senior who were coming through with the same problem, that they weren't talking about it. So for me, it was about giving some assurance to the junior pharmacists that you have every chance of having a great career ahead of you. You just might need some help finding yourself, if you like, as a pharmacist with this with this additional kind of consideration. And I think it's really important to echo my panel members' comments that people are represented in senior leadership roles. So I bang the drum for this and for neurodivergence, because I think it's so important that people can see neurodivergent leaders in pharmacy, and that's absolutely important to me.
Brilliant, thank you, Charlotte. So the things that are really that stand out are the questioning of the how and why, that people are hearing, and then the lack of representation, and we hear that a lot with our work. And especially particularly about disability, people don't feel comfortable in disclosing their disability status, and we hear that, and people won't be able to get the support that they need if they're not able to talk about it openly. So hopefully through the work that you're doing in your local networks, people are feeling more encouraged to be able to share those elements and also see the representation, individuals like yourselves and other people leading that good work. So what kind of things have you got involved with locally through your network? So Charlotte, I'll start with you.
So one of the things that you mentioned in my intro is that I'm an inclusion ambassador at Barts Health, and that's obviously an inclusion ambassador for lots of different aspects of the diversion and inclusion agenda, and it's an important thing for me to do. But I think neurodivergence is a really good thing to kind of add into that agenda. So I joined, so I went through the training, and I've been part of that, which gives me a lot of exposure to other aspects of the NHS and within my trust, and that's really useful. But I think also building my relationships on a very small grassroots level, just actually being someone who will talk about this. And the reason that I started talking about it in a previous job was because somebody who knew that I was dyslexic came to me and said, oh, I've got this member of staff who's really struggling. And actually just finding a voice and actually being prepared to talk to others was how I started out. And I would recommend for anyone dealing with anything similar who wants to support and who wants to move into this type of role, find the people that you talk to. And I was very lucky that my manager at the time was Tase Aputu, and she really encouraged me and supported me and helped me take those first steps and enabled me to start to support others. And I think when you support other people, you start to realise the importance of this work and this type of role. And that for me was a real turning point.
Brilliant, thank you, Charlotte. Yeah, I know I've heard other people say that they feel like they're responsible for having to fix a problem themselves, especially when it comes to a non-visible disability, and that's quite a lot of pressure to put on an individual. So if there's someone they can speak to, that's really powerful. Adiola, what kind of things have you been getting involved with locally?
So an example I can think of recently was a combination between the BAME network and the disability network. So I helped to put together a staff discussion on sickle cell awareness. So again, that is a condition which does affect a large population in not only North Central London, but many diverse communities, especially because it's a condition which affects Afro-Caribbean people. Essentially, it was an opportunity to bring both networks together and to put on a discussion for staff to talk about a disease which sometimes is called the invisible disease, because on the outside, you can't tell that they have a disability or a long-term illness. And it's something that's been coming up in the news more recently as well. There was the young boy who passed away due to poor care at NTL Trust. So again, it's just about where we can link in the different networks of the different protected characteristics. So that was quite a good opportunity that we had, where we got to focus on, I guess, 2 types of protected characteristics and put something on for staff, which they all really enjoyed. And we managed to bring in some nurses to speak to staff about it. And hopefully we're hoping to put on another talk in June for the World Sickle Cell Awareness Day as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, that intersectionality piece is so important, isn't it? And that multidisciplinary approach as well, because it isn't just about pharmacy. Raj, what kind of things have you been getting involved with?
So I sort of chair one of the Trust's inclusion networks, and I'm sort of a member of the BAME network as well. And some of the things that we've been getting involved in recently is sort of making sure that we have a safe space for anyone who identifies with those protected characteristics to be able to come along to. The networks within my organisation are relatively novel, I'd say sort of between 12 to 18 months. And what was becoming quite clear was that we wanted to move away from a corporate agenda. They were becoming, Microsoft Teams and things like that had made these meetings very, very formal. And what we wanted to do was move away from that to allow people to just come and have a safe space, to be who they want to be. And we had some wonderfully profound conversations about that yesterday, actually, in one of our meetings. The other things that we're getting involved in locally is we want to be loud and proud at Birmingham Pride. For example, we want a really good sort of we're sort of collaborating with lots of other NHS organisations to have a colourful Pride event, hopefully in September, and the release of the Rainbow Badge Pledge as well, which has gone out really, really well. And I can't take the credit for that. It was the members of the network who really moved that forward. And that's just a really important symbol for people working in healthcare, and it can remove barriers instantly for people who might identify as LGBTQ+ to actually come and have a conversation with a member of staff about that. So they're just some of the things that we've been getting involved in recently.
Brilliant. I love the variation in the different areas as well. You know, working with what's important locally, and there seems to be lots of different things that you can get involved with. So from some of the conversations I've had with, you know, pharmacists are working in a very frontline role, there's always sometimes a bit of a challenge about getting to, you know, pharmacy staff going to staff networks. And I just wanted to ask, why is it important for pharmacy staff to get involved in their local networks and initiatives? So Raj, I'll start with you on this one.
Sorry, I just had to unmute myself. Yeah, absolutely. And I think we as pharmacists or a pharmacy workforce know how underrepresented we are within healthcare arenas. So I think we as a profession sometimes feel marginalised. And we're small in numbers, but we have a huge impact. So it's really important that we get involved in staff networks, inclusion and diversity, because the same issues that affect lots of other professions within healthcare also affect us. I went to a NHS, NHS England diversity event in a year and a half ago before the pandemic. And I remember some of the conversations I was having, and with one person in particular, they said, oh, I can't believe a pharmacist is here. And getting involved in inclusion and diversity. It's not something that you'd put together. So it's really important, I think, that we as a profession have a strong, loud and proud voice for whatever protected characteristic or intersectional protected characteristics, because if we don't, we're missing an opportunity.
Brilliant. Thank you, Raj. Adiola?
Yeah, definitely echo what Raj has said. I think I remember very vividly as an undergraduate hearing things like pharmacists are introverts, and we like to, pharmacy is always in the basement in a hospital, or the pharmacist is always behind the counter. We're never seen. And it's, for me personally, it's like, I've kind of had enough of that. Like, why can't we be seen? We are such a diverse workforce and we bring so much to the NHS as well. We have a lot of us are very different. We have different voices. We all look different. We all have different characteristics. And I think it's time the NHS sees us for that. We're not all introvert. We all have something to offer. And I think I think especially where you are passionate about such things, taking a step to get involved in it. And I understand it can be hard in terms of the time and the commitment and balancing that with your usual workload. But I think if you're genuinely passionate about it, don't let the stereotypes that you're an introverted pharmacist or you're just there to provide medicine advice. Don't let that stop you. I'll definitely encourage everyone to get involved if you genuinely are passionate about it and have the time and commitment to be able to do so.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Just challenging that misconception of pharmacists. Charlotte?
Yeah, I very much agree with the previous comments. And I think that for me, the sort of neurodivergent spectrum and recognizing that spectrum is really quite a new thing. And for me, medicine and pharmacy have always been very kind of traditional. You have to learn in a certain way, you have to be very academic in a certain way. And I think that we really need to, as my panel member said, we really need to move away from that and recognize the diversity in the pharmacy workforce. And that, you know, there are, for me, there's huge strengths in my dyslexia and my neurodivergence, and I know that other people would say the same thing. So what I can bring things to the table that maybe others can't, and I just want to make sure that people see that. And I think there's always a challenge from our line managers about, oh, we haven't got time for this. But I think if you make time and you build the networks, and that's hard, but if you push for it and you build the networks, there are benefits for the pharmacy team. And I know there's been benefits for me from going and joining the Bart's-ability team and being part of that. So I think you just need to take those initial first steps, and then we can all move forward. And I think it's going to be hard, but I think, you know, within my career, dyslexia is now something that people will talk about and admit to. So I think that we're you know, that 20 years has moved us forward a lot. We've just got to keep going in the same direction.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, that's such a good point about having a more holistic approach about the individuals, because we are individuals that bring our whole selves to work, and we don't just leave parts of us at the door. And it's how we work better with that, and actually how much more productive you would be if you acknowledge all of that in your team. And then, so what are some of the challenges do you think that are involved with? So let me start that again. What are the challenges do you think there are to getting involved with your local networks? So Adiola, I'll come to you with this one.
I think it's definitely time. I think, as we've discussed, it can be difficult to, depending on the role you're in, I think it can be difficult to set aside time to be involved with these networks where the expectation is for you to essentially fulfill what your job description states. And I think it can be particularly difficult if maybe you're hospital-based pharmacist or even community-based or GP-based. I probably am a bit more luckier because I'm a CCG pharmacist and I work from home, and I can fit it in my schedule. But there are some times where things do get very busy, or for example, where I've been redeployed to vaccination centres. It's been hard, but I think as long as you have that fire and that passion burning for it, that will push you along and you will try and make time. But I think it's the time and the commitment that can be hard. And I think as well, being mindful of your emotional well-being as well. I think for me in particular, I think during lockdown, during COVID, there was a lot of things going on, in particular for Black people, and it can be a lot when it's constantly, you're thinking, I have to see on social media, do I really want to talk about it at work? Work might be my escapism from having to think about those things. So again, it can be hard. Some of the things that are discussed as well can be quite emotionally heavy. So it's again being mindful of, as well as if you need to take time away, if you are involved in those groups, if things are getting a bit too heavy or a bit too emotional, is knowing when to also take a break from it if it is becoming too much.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thanks, Adiola. Charlotte?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I think Adiola said it really perfectly there. And obviously with the neurodivergent point, I can hide this. And I think that's something, you know, the last 12 months has been very difficult for our colleagues in the BME, sort of within BME. And I think that's something we need to be aware of. But it is that personal nature, the fact that I can I have to go and talk about something which is really quite personal to me, and it represents a lot of challenges. And just thinking about it, sometimes the challenges that I've faced at really pivotal points in my career can be very draining. And I think that's the thing, is that you have to be prepared to put what can be a real personal challenge for you right up there and talk about it. And for me, I had a lot of challenges at university. I failed my first year, which has since been very much put down to me just not having any insight into the learning styles, and going from a small school classroom to a big university learning style was a huge challenge for me. And having to sort of put all of that out there is really hard. But I get value from it, and I see what my being representative does for other people, and that's what I take from it. But I recognise that it might be very different for me compared to other members of the panel.
Yeah, thank you, Charlotte. Raj?
I totally echo everything that Adeola and Charlotte have mentioned, and I think being frontline healthcare professionals, quite often there's the barriers of time, being released from, oh, you're supposed to be in the dispensary, or you're supposed to be on that ward, and you're like, well, hang on, it's, I think, we as line managers or as senior members of the pharmacy profession have a duty to be able to support the equality and diversity agenda. And that has to start, from the top down approach, making sure that happens. I think it takes a lot of bravery sometimes to attend a staff network meeting. Certainly the network that I chair, which is the LGBT+ network for my trust. Quite often, a lot of people haven't revealed that truth about themselves in their working life. And so coming to that network is almost, it can be very exposing. And that in itself is a challenge. What has this got to do with my working life? How is this, and it's about engaging with those people, because quite often they're the people who really need to be there, and really need to be able to have those conversations, not just to feel more comfortable at work, but if they feel more comfortable, they're happier. They're going to do their job better, and ultimately, what's that going to lead to? Better patient care.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Thank you. They're really good points, and I think it's so important to highlight the bravery and the emotional aware, like tax almost has sometimes about talking about these issues that are very personal. But if you are helping someone else feel better, and that awareness, sometimes it's just nice for someone else to go, oh yeah, I'm not by myself. That's quite moving. And so have you guys got any advice for anyone listening about how they can get involved in their local networks if they're worried about any of the elements that we've just talked about, or maybe not about committing to a network, but other things that they could be doing locally? So Adeola, I'll come to you first.
I'll go from the aspect of things you can do sort of outside of work. For me, I'm quite keen and quite passionate about speaking to children who look like me or who don't look like me as well, from other ethnicities, who may not know what the pharmacy profession is about, or that it's even accessible to them. Like, I remember I go to career talks quite often. I haven't been able to do them during COVID, but I remember going to one, and as part of it, the children had to guess my profession, and not one of them said I was a pharmacist. And it's like, why couldn't I be a pharmacist, or why wasn't that an option in their mind? So again, it's about bringing the awareness of being a pharmacist, whether, again, is that something you've thought about? Have you ever seen a Black female pharmacist? Maybe you haven't. That's why that's not even an idea to you. And again, also linking in with undergraduate pharmacy students as well, where they may be looking for a mentor, for role models. Someone like me, I didn't have that. I've sort of just kind of pushed along. But I think during my career, I've seen other Black female pharmacists in leadership roles, and that's kind of motivating me to say, okay, I can do this. So recently I've been paired with an undergraduate pharmacy student through an organization called BB STEM, where they try and link Black British professionals with undergraduate students who are in the STEM profession, just so they have someone to talk to about career options, what is there to do out there. And I think with pharmacy, it's becoming bigger, and it's in terms of the roles we can do, it's becoming a lot more diverse. And I think as an undergraduate, I didn't have that. So I think if you can get involved in telling younger people about what pharmacy is, as well as undergraduate students, I think that's a way of showing the diverse profession that we have.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. I think even if you're just helping one person, that makes such a big difference. I think sometimes people assume you have to do things on a big grand scale, but actually supporting one person, being a role model, is so effective and as powerful. Charlotte?
Yeah, and exactly what you described, Amandeep, is very much how I started out and what I would say to others. So if you think that you represent something that you don't see in pharmacy, then get out there and start to make some noise about it and bang the drum for it, which even if it's one person or one conversation, talking to your line manager, maybe finding you think a broader group that might represent you well. And if it's not a conversation you want to have within pharmacy, then maybe going to another area or the broader groups, because I think the points about sort of like joining the LGBTQ network and like maybe not wanting to sort of do that necessarily, that might bring challenges. It's that thing about finding a group. Maybe in bigger hospitals you can always find a group that maybe sits outside of your department, so if it's maybe conversations you don't want to have because they can be a challenge. But I mean, I did it very much from a one-on-one level and just starting with small conversations, and that's what I would recommend to others. And also, just as hard as it might be for you, other people will always benefit from it. You know, even if it's small numbers, they will benefit from having those conversations with you. So do it if you can, then do it, because it's just so valid for others. And I wish that there were people, role models for me that I could have had conversations with like 15 years ago, because it would have made a real difference to me in those early days.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Charlotte. And Raj?
I again totally sort of resonate with Adiola and Charlotte's points. I think for me, it's about asking the question. If you're new to an organisation and you want to get involved, ask the question. If your organisation doesn't have a staff network to your protected characteristic, why not? If you feel able to, ask the question. Go. Most organisations should have an equality lead of some description. Asking them those questions could be a catalyst. I think as a pharmacy profession, sometimes where our weaknesses fall is that we have quite different agendas. We work in very different sectors, but what could unify us is actually the collaboration of staff networks. It could bring us together, could be a real tool to bring us together as a profession. And so anyone involved in staff network would be saying is reaching out to your local healthcare providers, reaching out to see what other networks there are. They don't have to be in the same sector. My trust liaise with KPMG's staff networks, and there are common similarities there. So I guess it's just about being inquisitive, ask the question, and use that as a sounding board to what you want to do.
Brilliant, thank you. We'll end the questions there, because I'm conscious that people also want to get back to their work. And but I just want to say thank you so much for all the contributions and advice that you've given today. We've had a couple of comments come through, particularly I think this is really related to community pharmacy. Sometimes pharmacy as a profession is often working in silo environments and there's no protected time. But I think for larger organizations, there's a two-way street of people sharing what is available, but also finding out what's locally available. And if not, the RPS and other organizations are looking at I&D. And like, Raj has already said, is there a way of getting involved with the trust network? It doesn't have to be within your own organization or forming a group of like-minded people. And then there's another point about the importance of starting this out from an undergraduate level, getting involved at BPSA or your EDI committees in societies at a local level at university, and building that through, which I think is a really important point. So just to end the live, I just want to say, obviously with it being an NHS Equality, Diversity and Human Rights Week, that there'll be loads of promotion about what's happening locally, so go and find out about what's happening already if you don't already know, and also do come and look at our RPS pages, because we are doing lots of work within this space too. So I just want to say a final thank you to our panel members, and thank you for listening.